The morning light poured through the glass spires of Nexus Corporation Tower, turning the city's upper levels into a cascade of gold and silver. From the ground, it looked like perfection, humans and aliens working side by side in the gleaming symbol of a united future. But on the maintenance levels, perfection smelled like disinfectant and hot metal. Ethan Miller wiped a streak of sweat from his brow as he polished the chrome floor on level 87, his reflection rippling in the surface. The rhythmic hum of cleaning drones filled the corridor, their soft blue lights pulsing like slow heartbeats. To him, it was just another morning, another day of quiet labor that kept the lights on and his son fed. When the intercom chimed and the building's artificial voice announced, "Maintenance staff to level 42. Emergency protocols engaged," Ethan froze mid-motion. The tone was calm, but the amber lights flickering to life across the ceiling told another story. His comm buzzed a heartbeat later. "Miller, you're closest," his supervisor barked. Some kind of electrical fire in the executive lift bank. "Get down there now." "On it," Ethan replied, already sprinting toward the service elevator. The hum of the tower swallowed him as he descended. Level 42 came into view, shrouded in chaos alarms blaring, smoke curling along the high-gloss ceiling, and a crowd of panicked employees pressed back from the executive lift. The air stank of burning insulation and fear. Through the haze, Ethan saw them. A cluster of Ceridian executives, their azure skin glistening under emergency lights, arguing in a flurry of foreign syllables. And in front of them, one figure stood still, eyes wide and unblinking, their leader, Nara Ven, CEO of Nexus Corporation. Her tailored suit was pristine, but her composure cracked the instant she turned toward Ethan. "She's trapped inside," she cried, her melodic voice trembling. "My daughter Libby, she's still in there." Ethan's gaze followed hers to the sealed elevator doors. The control panel glowed red, temperature readings spiking. The system had locked down to contain the fire, a protocol that meant whoever was inside would suffocate before help arrived. "How old?" Ethan demanded, his voice rough. 6 cycles, she said, voice breaking. "Please, human, help her." That was all he needed. He grabbed the emergency toolkit from the wall, his movements sharp, automatic military training buried under years of monotony snapping back into focus. Kneeling at the control panel, he bypassed the diagnostics and jammed the manual override tool into the seam of the doors. "Stand back," he shouted. The panel sparked, then hissed. Metal screamed as he forced it open inch by inch, smoke rolling out in a choking wave. Through the heat shimmer, he saw a small shape crouched in the corner of the elevator car, below turquoise skin, streaked with soot, antennae trembling. "Hey there," Ethan called, forcing calm into his voice. "I'm going to get you out, okay?" The child didn't move. The flames licked up the side of the elevator, bright and hungry. "What's your name?" He tried again. "Libby," came a tiny, broken whisper. "Libby," he said gently. "That's a beautiful name. I've got a little boy about your age. You'd like him, he's a chatterbox." Her wide eyes blinked up at him through the haze. "Now listen, sweetheart," he said, lowering himself toward the gap. "My hands are going to hurt a bit, so if I make funny faces, you ignore me, all right?" She gave the smallest nod. The heat was unbearable, pressing against him like a living thing, but he reached for the emergency hatch on top of the car. The metal burned through his gloves instantly, searing his palms. The pain was blinding, yet he didn't stop. He wedged the hatch open with a groan of effort and dropped inside. The smoke clawed at his lungs. He reached for her. "Come on, Libby. Arms around my neck." She hesitated only a second before lunging into his hold. Her skin was cool against his blistered hands. He lifted her toward the opening, muscles screaming. "Reach up almost there." The flames flared again, a burst of heat that seared the air. "Hold on!" Ethan yelled as he shoved her upward, his own body shielding her from the blast. Someone grabbed her, a pair of elegant blue hands pulling her through. "I've got her!" a voice cried. Then another explosion rocked the elevator. The world tilted. Ethan felt metal bite into his skin as he dragged himself up, his vision tunneling, the roar of fire merging with his own heartbeat. He collapsed onto the cool floor outside, his burned hands trembling. The last thing he saw was the Ceridian mother cradling her daughter, their foreheads pressed together in the soft, luminous gesture of their kind. Naraven looked down at him, her composure shattered, tears cutting lines through the soot on her face. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice a melody frayed by fear. "You saved my greatest treasure." Ethan tried to respond, but his body refused. The smoke blurred into darkness. Somewhere distant, the building's AI calmly repeated, "Medical team to level 42. He exhaled, the smell of scorched metal filling his lungs. As his world faded, one thought pulsed through the haze, fierce and aching. "Connor, I promised I'd pick you up." The world returned to Ethan Miller in fragments white light. The soft hum of medical machines and the faint antiseptic scent that seemed to cling to every medical bay in the galaxy. His hands throbbed even before he opened his eyes, the pain muted but present beneath the numbing haze of regenerative gel. When he finally blinked into consciousness, sterile walls curved above him in elegant Ceridian architecture, smooth, flowing lines of pale silver blue. He wasn't in the public clinic. This was the executive medical wing, the kind of place reserved for the elite. For a janitor, it was another planet. His first coherent thought was of his son. "Connor," he rasped, forcing his voice through the dryness in his throat. "You're not supposed to talk too much yet," came a small, familiar voice beside him. Ethan turned his head, and there he was, Connor, sitting cross-legged in a chair far too big for him, his small hands gripping a datapad that projected a paused cartoon midder. His sandy hair was a mess, and his big brown eyes were both relieved and scolding. "You scared me, Dad." Ethan smiled weakly. "Scared myself, too. How did you get here?" "A lady with blue skin came to my school in a big shiny shuttle," Connor said, eyes wide. "She said you were hurt, but okay. She even knew my name." Ethan frowned, and before he could respond, the door to the room slid open with a soft hiss. A figure stepped through, tall, graceful, her silhouette framed by the glow of the corridor beyond. Naraven. No boardroom projection could have prepared him for seeing her like this in person. The powerful CEO, who ruled half the colony's trade networks, stood before him now in quiet authority. Her turquoise skin, luminous under the soft lighting, silver blue hair pulled into an elegant coil. Her expression was unreadable, but her eyes, those deep, glimmering eyes, betrayed a flicker of genuine relief. "Mr. Miller," she said, voice melodic yet controlled, "I'm pleased to see you awake." Ethan tried to sit up, but pain stabbed through his hands and shoulders. "Don't," she said quickly, crossing the room with measured steps. "You've undergone extensive regenerative treatment. Moving too soon could compromise the recovery process." She glanced at his hands, encased in shimmering gel sleeves that pulsed faintly with biolight. "The doctors say you'll regain full use within a week." The damage was significant. "I've had worse," he murmured, though his voice wavered. She studied him for a moment, perhaps unconvinced, then turned to Connor, her tone softening. "You must be the brave son he mentioned." Connor straightened instinctively, unsure whether to salute or hide. "You're Libby's mom," he blurted out. "The girl from the elevator." Something in Nara's poised demeanor cracked, just a hairline fracture, but real. "Yes," she said quietly. "My daughter." At that moment, a small shape appeared behind her leg. Libby peeked out, her antennae twitching, her sky-blue eyes fixed on Ethan with cautious curiosity. She wore a soft orange tunic now, her burns treated, her cheeks streaked faintly with healing patches. For a second, silence stretched between them, the kind only shared by people who had faced death together. Then, hesitantly, she stepped forward. "Your hands," she said in a small voice. "Do they still hurt?" Ethan smiled gently. "Only when I move them," he said. "And when I think about elevators." The joke earned a timid laugh from the little girl. Nara watched the exchange with something unreadable relief, admiration, perhaps guilt. "You risked your life for her?" she said finally, voice barely above a whisper. "For a stranger." Ethan shifted slightly on the bed. Wasn't much of a choice. Kid needed help. Her gaze held his, sharp and assessing. Still, not everyone would have acted. She paused, then straightened, her tone shifting to something businesslike. "Mr. Miller, Nexus Corporation owes you a debt that cannot be repaid with mere gratitude. Your actions saved not only my daughter, but this company's future." Ethan frowned, caught between pride and discomfort. "You don't owe me anything. I just did what anyone should have." "No," she said simply. "You did what few would." She stepped closer, the faint scent of ozone and spice following her. "I've reviewed your file. You're overqualified for janitorial work, former Earth Defense Force, tactical specialist. You've been here 3 years, raising your son alone." Her tone softened slightly. "A commendable man, buried in a thankless job." Ethan tensed. "That's all behind me. I just need steady work, nothing else." "And yet you rushed into a burning elevator," Nara countered. "You can't hide what you are, Mr. Miller, a protector." She turned toward the window, where the city's skyline glimmered beyond the transparent walls. "The fire was no accident," she continued, her voice lowering. "Our internal investigators found evidence of tampering. Someone wanted that elevator to fail with my daughter inside." Ethan's eyes hardened. "You think someone's targeting you?" "Someone is targeting her," she said, glancing back at Libby, who now sat beside Connor, their heads bent together over his datapad, the universal language of childhood bridging species. "And I can't trust anyone within my circle to protect her. Not anymore." Nara turned back to him fully. "Which brings me to why you're here." Ethan frowned, confused. "I thought I was here because of the fire." "You are," she said, "but not only that. I want to offer you a new position within Nexus, private security and cultural tutor for my daughter. You would live in the executive residence. Your son would be educated with full privileges, and your salary would reflect your courage." Ethan blinked, speechless. "You want me to, what? Babysit your kid?" Nara's lips curved faintly. "Protect her. Guide her. Teach her what it means to see the world through human eyes." She took a slow breath, her voice softening almost imperceptibly. "You didn't just save her life, Mr. Miller. You reminded me that not all humans see us as different." Ethan met her gaze. The memory of the elevator flashing in his mind, the child's terrified face, the fire's roar, the pain in his hands. He didn't know what to say. Connor, still watching from the corner, broke the silence with a grin. "Can we, Dad, please? Her place has to be way cooler than ours." Nara smiled slightly at that, the faintest shimmer of amusement breaking through her composure. "He's not wrong," she said. Ethan sighed, leaning back against the pillows, his burned hands pulsing beneath the gel. "You're serious about this?" "Completely," she replied. "I need someone I can trust." "You need a new beginning." He studied her face, searching for the trap in her words, but found only quiet sincerity. "All right," he said at last, the words slow, deliberate. "I'll do it." Her eyes softened. "Then it's settled. You'll begin once you're discharged." She turned toward the door, her daughter following close behind. But before leaving, Nara glanced back over her shoulder, her voice low and certain. "For what it's worth, Mr. Miller, you didn't just save my daughter. You saved me." The door slid shut behind them, leaving Ethan alone with his son and the quiet hum of the medbay. He stared at his bandaged hands, flexing them carefully. He had no idea then how much more fire lay ahead, or how the act that scarred him would become the spark that changed everything. The sky above, Nexus Colony, shimmered like liquid glass, reflecting the light of two suns as the tower spires pierced the horizon. 3 days had passed since the fire, and though Ethan's hands were still wrapped in regenerative film, the doctors had cleared him for limited duty. Limited, of course, didn't apply when the CEO of the most powerful interspecies corporation personally requested your presence. The transport that arrived for him, and Connor wasn't the creaking shuttle he was used to, but a sleek, chrome-edged craft with the Nexus insignia etched into its hull. As it rose from the worker district toward the upper tiers, Ethan stared out the window, watching the city's strata peel past the crowded trade decks, the neon-lit residential belts, and finally the crystalline skyline where the elite lived among the clouds. Connor was glued to the view, face pressed against the glass. "Dad, look. You can see the ocean from here." Ethan smiled faintly. "Don't smudge the window, kid." "Too late," Connor said, laughing. "It's already human-marked." The quip earned a chuckle from the pilot, but Ethan's humor faded as they docked at the executive platform. The place was silent, sterile, and impossibly bright, more like a museum than a home. A pair of Ceridian attendants greeted them, their movements smooth and symmetrical, and guided them through a corridor that glowed with bioluminescent veins running along the walls. When the doors opened to their new residence, Ethan froze. The apartment was larger than the entire floor of their old housing block. Every surface gleamed with a soft sheen of silver and blue. A panoramic window looked out over the city, the glass shifting tint automatically to adjust for glare. Connor darted off immediately, his laughter echoing down the hall. "Dad, my bed hovers." Ethan exhaled, rubbing his neck. "Of course it does. Impressive, isn't it?" Nara's voice drifted from behind him. She stood at the entrance, elegant as ever, her long coat trailing behind her like liquid silk. Today she looked every bit the CEO, again composed, untouchable, but there was warmth in her tone that hadn't been there in the hospital. "I trust the accommodations are satisfactory?" "They're more than that," Ethan said, looking around. "Feels like I should leave my shoes at the door." Her lips curved in a faint smile. "You'll get used to it." Her gaze flicked briefly to the gel wrappings still covering his hands. "How are the burns?" "Better," he said. "Still hurts when I think about it." She regarded him quietly for a moment, then nodded toward the adjoining suite. "Libby's eager to see you. She and your son have already discovered the play modules. I suspect they'll be inseparable." Ethan's expression softened. He could use a friend. Been a while since anyone gave him a chance. "Then perhaps this arrangement will help both our children," Nara said. "And perhaps," she added softly, "both of us." The words lingered between them, heavier than the air itself, before she turned toward the exit. "There's a formal event tonight, the Galactic Commerce Gala. Attendance is mandatory for me, and I would prefer not to go alone." Ethan frowned. "You want me to tag along?" "Not tag along," she said, glancing back at him. "Accompany me as my cultural advisor and private security. You'll observe, keep close, and if necessary, protect." "I'm not exactly gala material," he said, glancing at his work clothes. "I'm sure you'll rise to the occasion," she replied. "A tailor will arrive shortly to provide appropriate attire. And don't worry, your measurements were already in your medical file." His brow lifted. "That's not at all invasive." Her eyes glimmered with amusement. Efficiency is a Nexus virtue. Later that evening, as he stood before the mirror in a suit so fine it felt criminal to wear, Ethan barely recognized himself. The dark fabric shimmered faintly under the light, cut in the elegant hybrid style that balanced Terran simplicity with Ceridian symmetry. When Nara entered, he almost forgot how to breathe. Her gown caught the light like water, flowing from deep cobalt at the hem to silver at her shoulders. The thin crest circlet on her brow marked her rank, but her eyes, those eyes held something unguarded, almost human. "You clean up well," she said, her tone lighter than he'd ever heard it. "You're not so bad yourself," he replied, trying not to sound like a nervous teenager. The corners of her lips curved upward, and for a brief moment the distance between CEO and janitor vanished. Their transport glided silently through the night toward the Grand Nexus Hall, a structure of transparent alloys that rose like a crown above the city. From the outside, it shimmered with the reflection of stars. Inside, it buzzed with diplomats, financiers, and ambassadors from 24 worlds. As they stepped into the hall, conversation dipped. Hundreds of eyes turned toward them, the Ceridian matriarch and her human escort. Ethan felt the weight of every stare, but Nara's composure never faltered. "Remember," she murmured, looping her arm through his, "you're my cultural advisor. Observe everything. Speak only when necessary. Smile when required. And if someone tries to kill you," he asked quietly, "then you may improvise." She said it so evenly that he almost missed the flicker of humor beneath her words. The hall was a masterpiece of alien architecture, a dome of transparent metal revealing the endless night sky above, with shimmering energy streams weaving through the air like constellations come alive. Floating tables carried drinks that glowed faintly, and a crystalline orchestra played soft, ethereal harmonies. The peace didn't last long. A hulking reptilian being approached, scales glittering like molten gemstones. His slitted eyes narrowed as they landed on Ethan. "Nara Ven," he hissed, voice deep and oily. "Bold of you to bring a human to such a gathering." "Very progressive." "Ambassador Kreth," Nara said smoothly. "You're as charming as ever." Kreth's lip curled. "Rumors spread quickly, you know. About your associations." His gaze slid to Ethan. "Perhaps your human fascination extends beyond nostalgia for your late husband." Ethan stiffened, but Nara's hand tightened on his arm, a silent warning. Her smile never wavered. "You're mistaken, Ambassador. Mr. Miller is my cultural liaison, nothing more." "For now," Kreth murmured, his tongue flicking briefly over his teeth. "Though one wonders if your hybrid child will inherit your taste for humans or their weakness." The air grew cold. Ethan felt the muscles in his shoulders tense, ready to move, but Nara's grip anchored him. "Do tread carefully, Ambassador," she said, voice smooth as ice. "Some flames burn hotter than they appear." She turned away, pulling Ethan with her before the reptilian could reply. "That's one of your suspects," Ethan said under his breath as they walked. "Kreth, rival company, Astral Dynamics, ruthless, dangerous, and very interested in seeing me fail." "He seems like the friendly type," Ethan muttered. "I've survived worse dinners." Her lips twitched. "You haven't had Ceridian politics?" The orchestra's tone shifted, and couples began to move to the center of the floor. Nara's expression softened, a mischievous glint in her eye. "Care to dance?" Ethan blinked. "I don't. It's like your Terran waltz," she said. "Only with less gravity and more risk of scandal." "Perfect," he said dryly, but she was already leading him onto the floor. The music rose slow, haunting, and beautiful. Nara moved with effortless grace, every step flowing into the next, and Ethan, guided by instinct and her subtle cues, matched her rhythm. Their hands fit awkwardly at first hers slender and cool, his scarred and warm, But soon their movements found a strange harmony. Around them, whispers grew louder. Human and alien, dancing together beneath the light of 100 worlds. "They're watching," Ethan murmured. "Let them," she said softly. Sometimes the boldest defense is to be seen. For a heartbeat, the room vanished, the noise, the politics, the crowd. There was only her. The shimmer of her skin beneath the lights, the faint scent of ozone and spice, the pull of something he didn't dare name. When the song ended, they stood too close, breath mingling in the charged silence before polite applause rose around them. Nara's voice was barely a whisper. "Stay close, Mr. Miller. The night's only just begun." And as Ethan followed her through the glittering hall, his instincts screamed what his heart already knew. This wasn't a gala. It was a battlefield dressed in silk and smiles. The night cracked open with alarms. One moment the gala swirled in shimmering grace and polite applause, and the next, Nara's wrist communicator flared crimson, projecting an emergency sigil into the air. "Unauthorized breach executive residence, level 92, the AI announced, its calm tone twisted by the gravity of the words. Nara's face drained of color, her eyes wide but focused. "The children." Ethan didn't wait for orders. He was already moving, pulling her toward the exit as murmurs rippled through the hall. The orchestral music faltered, replaced by the rising wail of sirens echoing through the glass dome. They reached the private transport platform in seconds, the security escort still scrambling behind them. "Lock the gala down," Nara commanded, her voice steel over static. "No one leaves until I authorize it." The transport doors hissed shut, and they shot into the night. Ethan's pulse pounded with every kilometer between them and the tower. His mind raced through possibilities: sabotage, a diversion, or worse. "How many people have access to your residence?" He demanded. "Only my guards and senior staff," Nara said, clutching the console edge. "Taran's on duty tonight. He's been with me for years." He'd never... "Everyone's a suspect until proven otherwise," Ethan said sharply, then softened. "We'll find them." Her jaw tightened, but she nodded, staring out the viewport as the tower came into view, a pillar of glass and light cutting through the night sky, now flashing with emergency strobes. The platform was chaos when they landed. Drones zipped through smoke and shouting guards, scanning for intruders. Ethan pushed through the crowd, with Nara close behind. The air stank of scorched wiring. "Connor, Libby!" he yelled, his voice echoing through the corridors. The lights flickered as they reached the children's wing, and for one breathless instant, Ethan thought the worst. Then a small voice answered a whimper, muffled. "Dad?" Relief crashed over him like a wave. He sprinted forward, forcing open the half-melted door to find Connor and Libby huddled behind an overturned table, the holographic ceiling flickering above them, with stars that now looked like fire. Both were shaking, but alive. Ethan dropped to his knees, pulling them close, ignoring the pain in his still healing hands. "You did good," he whispered. "You stayed quiet. You stayed hidden." Connor trembled against him. There was someone outside. "I heard tools, like when you fix the heater." Libby said not to move. Nara knelt beside them, her usually unshakable voice breaking. "My brave girl." She gathered her daughter into her arms, pressing their foreheads together in the Ceridian gesture of safety. The child's antennae twitched weakly, then relaxed. A security officer appeared in the doorway. "Ma'am, the breach team secured the perimeter. No casualties, no visual contact with the intruder." Ethan's instincts prickled. "What about the security logs?" The officer hesitated. "They were wiped mid-incident." "Of course they were," Ethan muttered. He turned to Nara. "Someone inside your circle knew exactly what to disable. They weren't trying to kill, they were testing your defenses." Her eyes hardened. "They won't get another chance." Once the children were escorted to the secure quarters under triple guard, Nara led Ethan to her private study. The room was unlike the rest of the tower warm, lived in. Walls lined with real books and artifacts from both human and Ceridian culture. The door sealed behind him with a soft chime, soundproof and locked. Nara stood by the window, her reflection merging with the city lights beyond. "I trusted them," she said, voice low. "Every name on my security roster, every advisor vetted, loyal. Or so I believed." "Someone wants more than just power," Ethan said. "They want you off the board. Maybe worse." That elevator fire wasn't random, it was a warning. She turned toward him, her face pale but fierce. "And yet you still accepted this position. Why?" "Because I've seen what happens when people look the other way," he said simply. "You needed someone outside your system, someone they can't manipulate. And if they come again, then we make sure they don't walk away." The silence that followed was heavy, humming with shared tension. Nara poured 2 glasses from a crystalline decanter, the liquid inside glowing amber in the dim light. "Ceridian spiced whiskey," she said, handing him one. "Jared Libby's father introduced me to it. He said humans called it courage in a bottle." Ethan took a sip. It burned like memory. "He was human," he said softly. "Was?" Her voice cracked faintly. "A diplomat. Brilliant, stubborn, too brave for politics. He died 6 years ago. Shuttle accident or so they claimed. And you don't believe it." "I've never believed it," she whispered. Her gaze drifted to a small holoframe on the shelf, an image of a younger Nara, with a human man and a glowing infant cradled in her arms. "After his death, the board tried to remove me. Said a hybrid child made me unfit to lead. I fought them and won, but not without cost." Ethan set his glass down. "So you built walls." "High ones," she admitted, "until a human janitor tore them down by running into a burning elevator." He managed a faint smile. "You make it sound noble." "I was just doing what needed to be done." "That's what makes it noble," she said quietly. The distance between them had vanished without either of them noticing. The air felt charged, like the seconds before a storm. Her hand reached for his, fingers brushing the faint scars that still marred his skin. "These hands saved my daughter's life," she whispered, "and I trust them more than anyone in this building." Her skin was cool, almost electric against his warmth. Ethan's breath caught as she stepped closer, their reflections merging in the glass behind her. "Nora," he began, but the rest of his words dissolved when her lips met his. It was brief, soft, but fierce, carrying the weight of everything unsaid. Then the room exploded with sound. A piercing alarm shattered the quiet, and red light flooded the study. Both turned instantly, instincts overtaking emotion. "Security breach executive level," the AI announced. "Attempted override detected." "The children," Nara breathed. They ran. The corridors blurred past in streaks of blue light and shadow. When they reached the nursery, the guards were unconscious, their pulse still steady, but their weapons gone. The door to Libby's room was sealed, a faint glow pulsing at the lock interface. Ethan knelt, scanning it. Someone tried to force it open. Amateur work, but close. "Can you stop it?" "Already did." He pulled a micro tool from his belt and sliced the power line, cutting the bypass. They didn't get through. Nara exhaled shakily. "But they tried." "While we were gone," Ethan said grimly. "That gala, it was never about you. It was to get us away from here." Nara's expression hardened to ice. "Then it's someone close. Someone with clearance. Someone like Taran," Ethan said. "He was on duty before the incident, right?" Her silence confirmed it. He stood, his pulse steady, his voice quiet but full of resolve. "We find him tonight." She looked at him, really looked, and in her eyes he saw not a CEO, not an alien leader, but a mother on the edge of war. "Ethan," she said, her voice low, "what just happened between us?" "Can wait," he said. "The kids come first." She nodded once, but before turning away, she pressed her cool palm against his cheek. A brief, wordless vow. "This is why humans fascinate me," she whispered. Then, without hesitation, she leaned forward, kissed him once more, swift, electric, and full of unspoken promise. "For courage," she said. He grinned despite the chaos. "Then let's be brave." And as they strode side by side into the shadows of the tower, the lights flickering red around them, the line between protector and partner blurred forever. Dawn bled slowly across the horizon, painting the spires of Nexus Colony in bands of violet and gold. Ethan hadn't slept. Neither had Nara. The two of them sat in her private study, the city below glittering like a field of shattered stars, while the security feeds flickered across the holoscreen. Every angle of the tower, every motion detected, every staff ID checked. Nothing. The breach had vanished like smoke. "He's gone," Ethan said finally, leaning back. Turan had time, access, and a clean exit plan. That wasn't an impulsive act. Someone funded this. "Kreth," Nara said, her voice flat. "He's the only one with enough reach to buy silence and forge credentials. And enough hatred to risk everything," Ethan added. The faint glow of the monitor reflected in his eyes. "He's not done. He'll make another move soon." Nara turned from the window, her elegant silhouette framed by the rising sun. The soft morning light made her skin shimmer faintly, almost ethereal. "Then we make the first move." Ethan studied her, caught between admiration and concern. "You have something in mind?" "A trap," she said simply. "If they want my daughter, we'll let them think they can have her." He raised an eyebrow. "That's a hell of a gamble." "Calculated risk," she replied. "They believe I'll be relocating Libby to the mountain retreat for her safety. We'll announce it publicly. They'll act thinking the retreat is undefended." "And it won't be?" Ethan asked. "We'll already be there," Nara said, meeting his gaze. "Waiting." Ethan stood and paced, running a hand through his hair. "You're using yourself as bait." "I'm using the illusion of vulnerability," she corrected. "You'll oversee the real security detail here. The children stay in the tower under maximum protection, guarded by the two people I trust most." "Me," Ethan said. "And who else?" Nara hesitated. "Mira, my chief of internal logistics." "She's loyal." "Good," he said. "We'll need decoys too. Holographic doubles for the children and a mock transport route." "Already arranged," she said, allowing herself a small smile. "You really have thought of everything." "I've been planning for a moment like this for years," she said. "I just never expected to have help." "You do now," Ethan said quietly. For a moment, they simply looked at each other, the air between them humming with shared purpose and something deeper neither dared name. When they finally parted to make preparations, the tension lingered like a second pulse beneath the surface of every word. The hours that followed blurred into motion briefings, route simulations, false security logs, and system reroutes. By the time the announcement went public, the entire colony was buzzing with speculation. CEO Naraven relocates family amid ongoing threats. It was bait, bright, and irresistible. By afternoon, they were already en route to the mountain retreat, 2 transports, 1 decoy, 1 real. The decoy craft glided toward the public coordinates, carrying holographic projections of Nara and Libby guarded by drones. The real transport veered silently off course, heading for a classified outpost buried in the crags of the Azure Range. The facility loomed from the mountainside like a sleeping beast seal, glass and snow blending into the mist. As their ship touched down on the landing pad, Nara stood at the viewport, her expression unreadable. "I haven't been here since Jared died," she said softly. "He loved this place," said the silence reminded him of Earth. Ethan glanced at her. "It's beautiful," he said. "Cold, but beautiful. Like me?" she asked, with the ghost of a smile. He grinned faintly. "You said it, not me. Careful, Mr. Miller. Some of us bite. You say that like it's a threat." Her gaze lingered a second too long before she turned away. Inside, the retreat was eerily quiet. Minimal staff, sealed corridors, and automated systems humming in standby. Perfect for a trap. They secured the main suite, sensed the containment fields, and linked to the tower's feeds, showing Connor and Libby safe under guard. Hours passed in silence, the kind that presses against your ears until even breathing feels too loud. "You should rest," Nara said finally. Ethan shook his head. "I'll sleep when they're caught." She poured 2 glasses of Ceridian whiskey and handed him one. "You know," she said softly, "our bonding rituals are not so different from yours. We share a drink, exchange a truth, and face danger together." "That sounds suspiciously romantic for a war strategy," he said. "Sometimes the two overlap." Her eyes held his over the rim of her glass. "Tell me a truth, Ethan Miller." He thought for a moment, then said, "I haven't felt like I belonged anywhere since I left the military." "Until now." She smiled faintly, wistfully. "Then I'll share mine. I haven't trusted anyone since Jared died. Until now." The words lingered between them, as fragile as they were undeniable. She moved closer, the air between them electric. For a heartbeat, the world shrank to space between their breaths. Then the soft chime of the alert cut through the moment. "Incoming vessel," Ethan said, setting his glass aside. "Running dark, no beacon." They moved in unison, her activating surveillance feeds, him checking the containment fields. 3 life forms disembarked on the pad, silhouettes emerging through the mist. Taran, and 2 others, Advisor Melk and Director Perrin. "All 3 of them," Ethan said. "Your prime suspects." "And walking right into the trap," Nara replied, voice cold and steady. "Let's end this." The intruders bypassed the outer defenses too easily. Nara had left the path open on purpose. As they entered the suite, whispering to one another, Ethan triggered the containment field. In an instant, blue light snapped into place, sealing them inside a shimmering cage. Taran's expression turned from triumph to horror. "Nara, wait. You betrayed me," she said, stepping from the shadows. Her voice was calm, lethal. "You endangered my child, my company, my home. Give me one reason I shouldn't end your careers here and now." "You don't understand," Malk stammered. "It wasn't personal." "Kreth, he ordered it," Ethan finished. "We know." Perrin sneered. "You think you can stop him? You're just a human grunt playing bodyguard." Ethan's fist met his jaw before the last word finished leaving his mouth. The Ceridian crumpled against the containment field, dazed. "Guess so," Ethan muttered, shaking his hand. "But I hit hard." Nara stepped closer, her eyes glowing faintly with reflected energy. "Kreth's reach ends today," she said. "Colonial security has your confession recorded, and your implants are transmitting to the tower. Every board member will see the truth before sunrise." Taran bowed his head, shame etched in every line of his body. "He threatened my family," he whispered. "Said he'd kill them if I refused." "You'll testify," Nara said quietly. "And you'll get protection." He nodded, defeated. Ethan deactivated the field, summoning the arrest drones. As the traitors were taken into custody, Nara turned to him, exhaustion softening her edges. "It's over." "No," Ethan said, looking out into the night where the mist still curled over the landing pad. It started. Kreth won't stop here. She moved closer, her hand brushing his arm. Then we won't stop either. Their eyes met, the shared fire between them stronger now, brighter for everything they'd faced. The trap had worked, but the war was far from done. Somewhere beyond the mountains, a reptilian voice hissed into the dark, promising vengeance. But inside the retreat, standing shoulder to shoulder, Ethan and Nara had already begun to write the next chapter of their defiance. The night exploded with sirens. Nexus Tower blazed like a torch against the twilight skyline, the upper levels wreathed in smoke and orange light. Ethan's stomach turned cold before the transport even reached the landing pad. He could see the arcs of emergency drones circling the structure, their lights cutting through the haze like frantic fireflies. "The children," Nara whispered, her voice cracking for the first time since he'd known her. "They're in the residence." "We'll get to them," Ethan said, already strapping on the compact pulse pistol holstered at his side. The transport shuddered as it banked hard toward the tower. "Emergency override," Nara barked at the autopilot, her authority slicing through the alarms. "Executive Clearance Ven Protocol 7. The transport obeyed, slamming through the automated lockdown barrier. They landed hard on the 92nd level. Smoke poured into the corridor, choking and hot. The AI's calm voice echoed through the halls. "Fire suppression systems active. Unauthorized entry detected. Executive security offline." Ethan grabbed the medpack, ignoring the heat biting at his already scarred hands. The smell of burning plastic and ozone hit him like a fist. "Which direction?" "Children's quarters," Nara gasped, her eyes glowing faintly in the red light. Together they ran, their footsteps lost in the roar of fire and machinery. Every flicker of light looked like movement. Ethan's training took overcount steps, clear corners, assess threats. At the intersection, they found 2 guards sprawled unconscious, their armor scorched but intact. He crouched, checking pulses. Alive, hit with stun charges. "Someone disabled them without killing them," Nara said, kneeling beside him. "Kreth's people? They want the children alive. Then we still have time." Ethan kicked through the next door, the heat slamming into them like a living thing. The main hall was chaos flames climbing up decorative panels, smoke curling across the floor in thick black ribbons. Beyond the haze, a faint cry echoed. "Dad!" Connor's voice. Ethan's heart lurched. "Connor, hold on." They burst through the last corridor into the children's wing and froze. Standing in the middle of the flames was Kreth himself, his jeweled scales reflecting firelight like molten armor. In one clawed hand, he held a small plasma pistol. His other hand gripped Libby's arm. The little girl struggled, her turquoise skin streaked with soot and fear. Connor stood in front of her, his small body planted between her and the alien's weapon, defiant even in terror. "Let her go," Ethan shouted, aiming his pistol. Kreth hissed, his voice low and cold. "Careful, human. The plasma cells in this weapon are unstable. A single pulse will vaporize half this floor." "You wouldn't," Ethan said. "You'll die too." "Perhaps. But purity is worth dying for." His eyes burned with fanatic conviction. "The Ceridian line will not be tainted by hybrid filth or the humans who defile it." "You call her filth," Nara said, stepping forward, her tone like ice over steel. "But she's more alive than you'll ever be." Kreth's lip curled. "You've grown weak, Ven. Sentimental. I should have let the board remove you years ago." "And I should have buried you then," she snapped. Her gaze flicked to Ethan. He read it instantly. Move. Distract. Strike. He took a slow step forward. "You talk a lot for someone about to lose everything. What's the plan after this? Blow yourself up and hope they put your name on a statue?" "My name will live in purity," Kreth hissed. Yours will burn away. But in that moment, Kreth's focus shifted just a fraction toward Ethan's voice. It was all the opening Connor needed. The boy stomped hard on the reptilian's foot with every ounce of strength in his small frame. Kreth roared in pain, his grip on Libby loosening. She tore free and stumbled toward Ethan. The plasma pistol fired a streak of blinding blue, slicing through the air. The blast missed them by inches, but ignited the wall panel behind. Fire roared upward, devouring oxygen. Ethan lunged, grabbing both children and pulling them behind the shattered remains of a support column. "Stay down," he shouted. The room burned around them, the heat so intense it blurred the edges of sight. Nara dove forward, her coat catching sparks as she grabbed a fallen guard's rifle. "Kreth," she shouted. "You've already lost." "Not yet," he snarled, turning toward her. But before he could fire again, a deep, resonant hum filled the air. Ethan glanced toward Libby and froze. The girl stood trembling, eyes wide, small hands raised unconsciously toward the flames. The fire didn't touch her. It bent away, swirling in strange, beautiful spirals that shimmered blue instead of orange. The air vibrated, alive with energy. "Libby," Nara whispered, awe and fear colliding in her voice. "What are you?" The girl's antennae glowed faintly. The flames twisted like ribbons, pulling together into a single glowing sphere above her palms. Kreth turned too late. The ball of heat expanded, exploded not in destruction, but in a burst of pure, radiant light. The fire vanished, replaced by a rush of cool air as every sensor in the corridor triggered at once. The alien's pistol clattered from his hand as he staggered backward, blinded. Ethan seized the chance, slamming into him with the force of a freight drone. The two crashed into the floor, rolling through ash and debris. Kreth was strong, scales like armor, but Ethan fought with something deeper than muscle. He fought with everything left in him. For Connor, for Libby, for Nara. With a final shove, he drove Kreth beneath the emergency sprinkler valve and shouted, "Connor!" "Now!" Connor leapt for the manual release. The system hissed, then roared as white suppressant foam poured from the ceiling, freezing on contact. Kreth howled, the foam hardening around him, encasing him in a shell of shimmering crystal, until only his hateful eyes remained visible. Silence followed. Only the faint hiss of cooling metal filled the air. Ethan collapsed back, coughing, his chest heaving. Nara ran to him, her face streaked with ash and tears. "You're insane," she whispered, kneeling beside him. "And I've never been more grateful." He managed a weak smile. "Told you I improvise." She laughed a sharp, broken sound and pulled him close, her forehead resting against his in the Ceridian gesture of unity. Connor and Libby stood together nearby, both shaking, both staring at their hands as if the world had changed, and it had. Later, after emergency crews swept the level, and Kreth was dragged away in chains of hardened resin, the four of them gathered in Nara's private chamber. The city beyond the glass shimmered in distant calm, unaware of how close it had come to tragedy. Libby sat curled between them, quiet, her antennae drooping. "It was me," she whispered. "I made the fire go away." "I didn't mean to." Ethan knelt before her, his bandaged hands open. "You didn't start that fire, kiddo. You stopped it. You saved us." Her wide eyes shimmered with tears. But it was scary. It felt like burning and freezing at the same time. "That's what power feels like sometimes," Nara said softly, brushing her daughter's hair. "Your father used to say fear and courage are the same flame. It's how you shape it that matters." Ethan looked between them, the faint scars on his hands catching the soft blue light. "Fire reveals who we really are," he murmured. Nara's eyes met his, knowing. And sometimes, she said, her voice barely above a breath, you have to get burned to find where you belong. The two children, human and hybrid, leaned against each other on the couch, exhaustion overtaking them. Their small, intertwined hands glowed faintly in the soft reflection of the stars beyond the glass. Ethan and Nara stood together at the window, side by side, the silence between them warm, alive, and full of promise. Outside, the first light of morning climbed over the towers, painting the city in gold. In its reflection, the four of them looked like something new, not alien, not human, but the beginning of something greater. A family forged in fire.